Welcome, Steve, to the 18th episode of Unleash the Knowledge's podcast, Everyday Extraordinary, where it's my job to push the message that we all have extraordinary capabilities within us, and we simply need to challenge and activate those. And I do this by having amazing conversations with everyday extraordinary people like yourself. So thank you, Steve, for coming on the show.
Thank you. I'm really excited to be here.
Awesome. Well, you are the new author of Don't Take Yes for an Answer. We'll dive into it in a bit. You published during COVID. You've had a pretty eventful 2020 as well. But the book is powerful, and it's something that I think a lot of people should read. And I just want, before we hop into questions, I want to point out one thing that you mentioned early in the book, and I think is very powerful, is that we've all been getting a type of feedback where it's what we want to hear. And it's usually the pieces of advice that you either already know, or it's just, constructive criticism packaged in a way where you're not actually understanding what you're doing wrong, and the person's really not trying to upset you. So they word it in some fashion that gets something across, but it's not quite what you need to hear to level up. And I want to say that I'm proud or happy that you have brought that into a book, especially from the millennial standpoint. A lot of people don't want to get that advice, or they don't actually want to hear it because they think that they're perfect already. They're living this, lavish lifestyle off of social media, posting their highlight reel. But unfortunately, a lot of us are far from perfect, and we're all lifelong learners. And I just really wanted to note that. So when I've heard feedback, it's always been beneficial, and I've always respected the person who actually gave me the right, deep down feedback that maybe I didn't want to hear, but I respected their opinion in the end. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Awesome. So I'm going to start my timer now so I can respect your time fully. We'll hop into some questions.
Great.
Awesome. So first question, for those who may not know about you, can you share a little bit about yourself?
So I'm 54 years old. I'm a longtime talent agent. As you know, because you read the book, I was a very, very terrible lawyer for a very brief period of time. Love learning, love journalism, love sports, and I've been able to combine some passions of mine with the background in the law and in journalism and in sports into an agency career that I've had now for over 25 years, representing sportscasters, newscasters, TV weathermen, retired athletes, coaches, radio personalities, podcast hosts. And just really the thing about it that I love the most is just helping people reach their potential. I had a friend of mine a long time ago jokingly say, "You're not an agent, you're a dream facilitator." And I think that really resonated with me. I'd like to be a dream facilitator for other people. And that's what kind of is the reason I wrote this book, because I think you can facilitate dreams for people outside of the four walls of broadcasting, for anybody with the same principles that I've learned and applied in my career.
I like how you put that, because I think a lot of people take their job title too close to heart. And, whether you're a janitor to a CEO, there's more to your daily life. And something you mentioned in the book that I really like too is that there's no real difference between the public speaking side of things and the private speaking. It's kind of like a one kind of deal. And I believe that truly. The way you talk to someone on the street, walking down the streets of New York versus the boardroom, it should be generally a similar approach or come off as the same way. So that's really valuable advice. And the book was published in 2020 during COVID. I'd love to unpack just the process that's taken you through that, mainly from the idea or the moment when you decided to start writing the book to ultimately distributing it and publishing it during 2020. What can you speak on those moments?
Sure. So the book really started, I would say, probably 25 years ago when I first got into the working world. And I started to realize that there were certain people that should be more successful than they are, in terms of they went to good colleges, they worked hard, they studied, they were good people, but yet they were plateauing in their life and their career. And it kind of got me into this idea that I call personal packaging. That was kind of the very early part of all this. People who just didn't even know they would put their resume on copy paper rather than invest in like a nice piece of paper. Or the font or the structure of the resume was so haphazard that they just couldn't even, you really didn't take them that seriously. So there's like really simple flaws that people were committing that I started writing notes about us, all the way back. And then, fast forward to about 5 years ago when I was turning 50, I just, sort of realized that there's more that I could offer the world, I was hoping, than just being a talent agent. And I thought, what are the principles or what are the things that I've learned over the years that could be applicable to someone like you or anyone, a doctor, a dentist, like a janitor, anybody could be more successful in their communication and therefore, I think, have more success in their career, have more influence, possibly make more money, retain more clients, get more business. And I thought that, okay, these things that I've learned are applicable. So I started teaching it actually and doing some coaching. And one of the people that I was coaching actually said, I love your ideas. Where can I buy a copy of your book for my kids? She wanted to buy 2 copies. And that led me to, start writing, for real, writing down, an outline for a book. And then I got an agent. And next thing you know, I was very lucky to have a bidding war for the book. And then HarperCollins purchased it. And then, everything was going great until COVID, of course. So that was quite a curveball.
Yeah, I bet. But I mean, I think we could all be, thankful for the benefits, the positive benefits that social media can bring us. It can allow you to get the message out to a global audience, at the click of a button, even during the tough times we're going through now. But very cool. So yeah, I'm glad you said that, because that seems to be a reoccurring theme for why, 85% people write a book, is because they have all this knowledge within them and these experiences, and they want to push it out to the world to benefit someone. And I always say that everyone's got a story, everyone has a message. And I think it should almost be someone's duty to write it into a book, because if it can impact one person, it's done its job. And this book is, from my standpoint, I think it's a beneficial book to read heading into college and leaving college. And it can really get you, build that self-awareness and allow you to propel your career early on. So if someone were to just come across this book, great cover, sees it at Barnes & Noble, sees it on Amazon, my page or your page, what's the number one takeaway you're hoping readers can obtain after reading it?
I think the number one takeaway is what you don't know about yourself is hurting you. It's really hurting you. And the other thing is that I think you might study hard, like I say, do all the right things, go to a good college. But the technical part of your job, whether you're, again, I say doctor, lawyer, dentist, engineer, it's a very small correlation and causal relationship with your success. And yet you don't learn that. When you go from first grade on to high school to college, take your AP classes, whatever it is, you study in college, even graduate school, all of it is programming you to learn these technical skills. And what life is really about is having enough proficiency in the technical part of your job, and then a lot of the non-technical, the ability to get along with other people, to make people like you, to make people trust you, to make people want to work with you. And those are the qualities that this book is about. It's really these soft skills, the EQ, if you will. And I think that most people don't really know what EQ means or what soft skills means. So I'm trying to give you like a little bit of a simple life hack to say, all right, here's what you may not be doing. Here's what might be hurting you. And here's a really simple way to look at it. And here are some easy metrics to put around it that you can start quantifying it and improving it.
Awesome. That's great stuff. And I come from I just got my master's in financial risk management. I started going through the process of applications, not something I really want to pursue whatsoever, to be completely honest. But most people are telling me that the actual financial understanding and knowledge is like 20-30% of the job. The rest is being able to talk to people, building relationships, public speaking, all these other soft skills. And I think most people somehow value the technical skills more than the soft skills, but I think things are completely twisting in today's world. And, you're starting that revolution or keeping it going with this book. So I appreciate that.
Well, that's because the academic world, that's because the academic world points you completely in the direction of the hard skills. And hard skills are important. If you want to be a computer programmer, you got to learn how to do the engineering and the software coding. You want to be a doctor, you better know how to operate or diagnose the patient. But at a certain point, I think anyone who does choose one of those fields and goes through the right schooling, they are going to get good enough at the technical part of the job, and they're not going to have any influence or emphasis on the non-technical parts. So that's where I think the gap is.
Definitely. I agree. And you talk about this quickly, just in the subtitle. You learn about authority, warmth, and energy that you talk about in an acronym called AWE. So out of this trifecta communication strategies that the book is pretty much centered around, can you share which one of those three, if one or maybe a couple, that most people have a challenge in perfecting or even just implementing into their life?
I think all three, depending on the person. I mean, a lot of people lose their authority because they have bad habits about their voice. They might speak in an artificially high pitch or in a sing-song manner, or they lose their authority because they don't make eye contact when they're speaking to someone else, or they don't have an emotional connection to their own message. So it's a problem for a lot of people. They might be really competent and really talented and very gifted in the job, but because they don't have that stylistic authority about themselves, they lose the room, or they lose the person. The warmth is a problem too for a lot of people. It's that inability to connect with someone. Maybe you just get too caught up in your own world. You don't ask anything about another person. You're not listening to them. You're not making eye contact when they're speaking. That creates a lack of trust. And if you have a lack of trust in your relationship, whatever the relationship is, you're not going to succeed. Your coworker doesn't want to work with you. They don't want to be on a project with you. Someone doesn't want to be your client or your customer because they don't trust you. And you may be someone that is trustworthy. That's the irony of what I'm trying to say in this book. You might be a person of deep character and really are trustworthy, but because your communication style doesn't communicate that, then you're not going to be trusted. And then the last piece is this energy, which is, that's just a dynamic that we create with other people. And we all have that energetic dynamic. It can be positive or negative. It can be deflating or inflating. And there are those people that you want to be around. And those are the people that are energetic to you. And so I think you have to be somewhat mindful of what kind of energy and energetic dynamic are you creating with those in your life? And is that holding you back?
That's a good point. And I'm all about practical steps in giving suggestions where someone can do it today. So, and this might be a loaded question because each of those three pieces are, a whole book in itself, I'm sure. But is there any practical step you could give the listeners today of how, maybe you could just pick one of those three on how they can, today start implementing that and growing upon it and strengthening it?
Sure.
Their career?
Sure. Yeah. I'd say that, in my opinion, a lot of people lose the room with their voice immediately because of filler words like like or like I said earlier, a sing-song pitch or a high-pitched voice. So I would say take some inventory of your voice. And in the book, I talk about this book called Change Your Voice, Change Your Life, where Dr. Mort Cooper says your voice is your second face. It's the second most important impression you're making on people. And we all pay attention to our face. We comb our hair, we shave, we brush our teeth. We take care of ourselves. We wear pre-COVID, we wear nice clothing to meetings, and yet with our voice, we don't pay any attention to it, and it really can harm you, and often will be harming you. And some people even know it. They say, "Oh, I hate my voice," but then they don't do anything about it, right? And then the second thing I would just say is another really easy, I think, low-hanging fruit thing you can do is learn to listen better, and just learn to become a more active listener, learn to ask questions, learn to shift the conversation onto talking about another person, finding out what they like and what they're interested in and asking them about it. Just create that connection. And it actually makes your life, I think, a lot more fun and enriching.
I bet. And those are two suggestions that I'm going to have to take myself right away. So that's super helpful. So the Unleash the Knowledge community, our demographic is really 18 years old to 34, which falls into a pocket of people, leaving college, leaving high school, really trying to find out who they are, building this self-awareness, figuring out what career is good for them, and then trying to figure out how to kind of level up within the career. So I'd love to hear any advice or tip that you can share to that, maybe that 22-year-old person. Maybe go back to when you were 22, what you probably wished when you were in that office hearing or at Vanderbilt School of Law that you're not the best associate, and something that maybe if you heard then, it would have put your career at a completely different level.
It's a great question. I've often thought about, like, if I got a mulligan and did my life all over again, what would I do? I think that the key to life, in my opinion, is like I said, just be good at your job, be good enough, work hard, and show up and have good ideas, but also build relationships and build lifelong relationships if you can. And don't do it with an agenda. Do things for other people. You know, don't keep score. Obviously, if you know someone is always going to take advantage of you and it's all they want is favors from you all the time, then okay, that's on the extreme. That's an outlier. Then don't be used, of course. But if you're there and you're a resource to other people, I mean, like you have been to me, thankfully. Like I really appreciate the interest you've taken in my book and in just the relationship we've built over the last, you know, probably 5 or 6 months. It means a lot to me. So I would say you're doing a lot of the right things, and you know, you're building a good business. You're a young guy, and you're meeting people like me. You're a resource, and you know for sure. If I think you probably inherently know this, but if I know someone who writes a great book and you said to me, hey, Steve, I know you know so-and-so on LinkedIn, can you introduce me? Of course, I'd be thrilled to do it because you have a lot of goodwill built up with me already. And I think that it's exactly what young people should do is just try to build up a bank of goodwill, be a resource to other people, try to do the right thing, solve other people's problems. And you'll find that I think in my own life, you know, again, I've never kept score, but if I was to keep score, if I've done, let's say 1,000 favors for people, I've gotten back 10,000. Like it's been way more in my favor. And all the good things I've done for other people, I've gotten way more back in return.
Yeah, that's amazing advice. And I always try to tell people, even from my young age and whatever wisdom I've you know, collected already, I say that it's you know, do something for free or give free value in some way. My whole 6 years in basketball, 4 of those was unpaid. And I just got to get to UConn, which was my last 2 years, which was a paid gig, and I got my degree. But that was 4 years of, you know, brutal hard work where, you know, no acclaim, no recognition and things like that. But that's ultimately what you have to do to get to that position. And I'm sure in your own experience, you know, you've done a handful of deeds, for not looking for any monetary gain, not looking for any recognition, but that compounds. And that, you know, I like that term goodwill. That's definitely powerful. And I've definitely seen it happen in my own life. So I hope a lot of people can cherish those words. So we're running out of time. I have a couple, 3 or 4 last questions that could be answered within a sentence if you're up for it.
Whatever you need.
So first off, the book came out this year. You thought about writing it at 50. And are there more books in you that you want to push out? Do you have that burning edge where you're thinking you have more knowledge that you want to give out to the world in book form, at least?
I do. I mean, there's another book that I thought about writing called Always Talk to Strangers, which is the idea that I think that your parents mean well. And I'm a father of 2 young kids, 13 and 11, and we give our kids advice when they're 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 years old. That's great advice. But then it becomes something that's embedded in them. And it actually is the wrong advice when you turn 18. Yeah. One of those being never talk to strangers. So I thought about all the things that our parents have told us that were great when we were children, but we should learn to leave those behind when we grow up. And that would be the other book I would write. Because I think a lot of people just kind of have, you know, kind of indoctrinated themselves with a way of thinking that isn't healthy as adults, that was healthy as children.
That's true. I'm sure whether you just take the strangers angle or you literally list out a whole bunch of advice that you probably received at 12, 13 years old, that have completely twisted once you're 18. I think that's a gold mine of a book. Be super helpful. So maybe more books come and we'll have to stay tuned. And through the book, I've learned that you're a lifelong learner yourself. You took courses, you've taken, you know, you went to NYU for a little bit. You took an acting course. You just wanted to really dive deep into your career. And I really, I idolize that for sure because I'm a lifelong learner. I think that's the only true way to learn. To elevate is to continue to learn. So is there a book or a few books that you find yourself rereading or you find yourself gifting to others?
Yeah, there's a lot of great books. And one book that I've loved, and it's such an old classic, but I really think it's the best book I've ever read on this topic, which is How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie.
Oh, yeah.
You know, the book's probably 80 years old at this point. But look, at the end of the day, if I could distill that book into one sentence, it would be see the world through the other person's point of view and perspective and try to frame that from his or her perspective. And if you meet somebody on their ground, you're going to have a lot more success in your relationships. And I just think it's great advice. And we make everybody read it before they start working at our company. And it's a very, I'm sure you know, it's a very short, simple read. And the other book that I really think is, I mean, these are classic books. I'm giving you great ones. Yeah. But the other book that I think is something that I've gone back and read many, many times, and it's stood the test of time, probably over 30 years now, is The 7 Habits of Highly Successful People. Because what I like about those two books is they're very specific in nature. They're not really self-help books. They're very prescriptive and a way of thinking. And that's what I tried to do with my book is I don't want it to be like rah, rah, you know, you do this, you're going to be so successful. No, like here's very specific things to think about in your life that you might not have otherwise been thinking about. And I think it would have a big impact. And The 7 Habits of Highly Successful People, you know, one of the things he talks about is, you know, begin with the end in mind. And I think it's a very powerful, powerful mantra. And it's been in the back of my thoughts my entire career. So it's incredibly valuable. I highly recommend, if you haven't reviewed it, you should. And I think it'd be a great read for you.
Absolutely. I haven't finished 7 Habits, but I have read How to Win Friends and Influence People, and 2 timeless reads. You know, principles that were instilled in 1920 or 1930, whenever they were written, now being 2020, you know, the principles still stand today. So for sure, I mean, those are definitely books that I need to fully absorb and really dive deep into them. And also
one more book, if I could just recommend to you real quick. It's a little bit off the beaten path, but there's this book called Seabiscuit. It was a famous book about 20 years ago about a horse that was a successful horse in the late 30s and early 40s. And what I loved about that book was that it really is about human potential and about potential of, in this case, a horse. But it was really about the trainer learning and the jockey learning how to get the most out of Seabiscuit and understanding that Seabiscuit needed to be treated differently than other horses. And I think that's what a great coach or leader or manager does. He knows that if I have an Owen who might need to be pushed a certain way, okay, push him. But if I have a guy over here who's not going to take well to being pushed, but also has a lot of potential, learn how to nurture that person and still get the best out of him. It's not about this one size fits all, crack the whip on everybody. And I think that was a great lesson from that book that I think a lot of people would love.
I'm really glad you brought that up, because in that, I talk about that in education as well. And from a coaching side, that it's not a cookie cutter way to present anything. You know, I mean, I struggled in algebra in high school because I didn't learn that certain way. And the teacher never kind of pulled me aside and helped me learn the way I learned. And I think that across the board between formal education and you know, sometimes in sports early on, the coach who's not as well gifted as many others, it's just coaching one way, one direction, one principle, and it's highly inefficient. So I'm glad you say that, and I completely agree with that. So last 2 questions is, do you have a personal mantra that you live by that's maybe been passed down by a parent or a grandparent or a mentor of yours that you kind of revisit every morning to get yourself going?
You know, I think my wife has instilled this in me in the last 15 years. It's just a sense of really trying to have a level of gratitude in my life on a daily basis. My wife is religious. She wakes up every morning, she prays, and she thanks, you know, God for being alive. And I think it's really powerful. And I'm not particularly observant like she is, but that has rubbed off on me. And trying to have that level of daily gratitude just for being alive, honestly, just the good fortune of being here is something I wish I could do it more and do it better, but trying to at least a little bit instill that in myself, just that sense of good fortune and luck and gratitude every day. So that would be my mantra that I'm working on, I would say.
Yeah, awesome. It's a lifelong journey. That's great. And last question, what is your definition of extraordinary?
I think an extraordinary person is one who has made an impact on others. It's that Jackie Robinson line, you know, the life is only worth measured in the impact it has on others. So I think you could, you know, there's a woman, this didn't make the book, but there was a woman named Nancy who was the cleaning woman, the janitor, if you will, in our old building when we used to work on West 57th. And I would see her every day. And she was the nicest, friendliest, warmest, most caring person I think I've ever met in my whole life. And I was always amazed by her just incredible, gregarious, warm, loving, kind attitude. And finally, one day, I didn't mean this to offend her, but I said to her, I said, Nancy, how do you do it? Like, how are you so happy and friendly? Like, you have like a very tough job. You're emptying garbage pails and cleaning, stuff. And she said, Steve, you don't get it. I'm not a cleaning woman. That's not my job. My job is to make your life better. My job is to know that when you come into your office tomorrow morning, everything's going to be clean and neat, and you're going to feel a sense of refreshment, that you're going to come into your office tomorrow and it's going to be great for you. That's my job. And I thought, wow. And so I think Nancy is living an extraordinary life. And you could have someone who's the governor or the president who's not living an extraordinary life because they're so wrapped up in themselves and in their work. They may be only out for themselves. They may make a lot of money. They may not do any good with it. They might do a lot of bad with it. So someone like Nancy, to me, is the embodiment of the principle of how you live an extraordinary life.
That's amazing. And that reminds me of a book I just read by Robin Sharma. I don't know if you're familiar with him. He has a book called Leader Without a Title. And it pretty much encompasses what you just said, where you could be the janitor or the CEO or the middle management individual. And it's not about the title. You could be the best leader you could possibly be at whatever level you're currently at. And then again, to the point we raised earlier, that her title is not a janitor. Her title is make Steve's office the cleanest it could possibly be so he could have the most effective day possible, and then do that every single day. So that's some really amazing wisdom. I appreciate that, Steve. So thank you again for hopping on the show. You are the new author of Don't Take Yes for an Answer. Is there anywhere I could send listeners and people that view my social platforms to learn more about you and grab a copy of the book?
Sure. Just go to www.stevenherz.com, STEVENHERZ.com, and you can just click on that and you can buy the book on Amazon right from there, or barnesandnoble.com, or you can get it at any bookstore. And then if you want, on the website, you'll see you can follow me on, Twitter and LinkedIn and Facebook and, Instagram if you're into that kind of thing. And that's it. I really appreciate anyone who's interested in it. And thank you for having me today. It really means a lot. Thank you.
Of course. Thanks, Steve. I'll pass on the message. You'll see the book on my page more often, and I'll be able to do a deeper dive into the review and how people can gain more value from your work. So thanks again.